This is AUGforums.com Real Talk, an unfiltered, independent perspective on Acumatica Cloud ERP. My name is Tim Rodman, and I want to mention three things in this pre-recorded intro before we get started. First, thank you to our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Repay. Repay offers omni-channel integrated payment solutions for Acumatica users. Whether you are making B2B payments or collecting them, Repay is your full-service payments provider. Power up your payments to empower your business and accelerate the AP and AR payment flow through one seamless integration. Our second sponsor is DataSelf. DataSelf Analytics is a revolutionary reporting solution that enables organizations to make the most informed decisions faster and easier than ever. It uniquely simplifies business intelligence, empowers anyone to build and access dashboards, and delivers critical business insight when and where you need it. Our third sponsor is Velixo. Velixo is an award-winning provider of Excel-based reporting solutions for Acumatica. With Velixo, you can build financial, project, and other business reports in Excel with live Acumatica data in just a few minutes and get the answers you need. If you know Excel, you can do it. Please take a minute to support this podcast by clicking each one of the sponsor banners located at augforums.com/sponsors. Our sponsors track clicks, and every click helps to support this podcast. The second thing I'd like to mention is that I'm always looking for victims. Guests. If you use Acumatica in any capacity, no matter how small, I'd love to talk with you. Check out augforums.com/podcast and click the link near the top of the page to learn more about being a guest on the podcast. Third and finally, I'd love to see you listed on my Rolodex. Check out augforums.com/Rolodex to find out who else is using Acumatica and read the instructions at the top to see how you can add yourself to the list. All right, that's it for the pre-recorded intro. Let's get started. Today is Wednesday, May 4th, 2022, and this is episode number 85, Aaron Sutherland, Controller at NanoCellect Biomedical. Aaron, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, Tim. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I'm super excited to have a fellow San Diegan on the podcast. I'm jealous. You're still out there in San Diego. I'm out in Columbus, Ohio. Maybe I can get some sunshine virtually through this podcast episode.
I'll try my best.
So, I always like starting off with the brief origin story of each one of our guests. So maybe you could give us where you grew up, where you went to college, and what your first job out of college was like.
Sure. So I actually grew up in San Diego, which is kind of rare. Sorry about that. I got a call coming in here. Let me decline real quick. Sorry. Hey, Jeremy, I'm sorry. I'm on a Zoom meeting right now. Yeah. All right. Sorry about that.
And by the way, I love this kind of stuff. It keeps us raw and authentic. So no problem. If a fire engine goes down your street, no problem.
Yeah. So as our CFO, hopefully he doesn't listen to the podcast. I thought I hit decline and actually hit answer on Teams there. So sorry about that. So I grew up in San Diego. I went to college at a small college kind of in the Los Angeles area called Azusa Pacific. Majored in accounting. Kind of started working for a company called National Services Group while I was still in college doing accounts payable, and stuck on with them for a little bit even after I graduated. They were actually, I think at the time, the country's biggest painting contractor. Then eventually I actually made it out to Columbus, to Ohio State for my MBA program, and kind of wrapped that up probably 6 or 7 years ago now. I'm not sure exactly, but time kind of has flown since then.
So you actually lived here in Columbus for a couple of years there?
Yeah, like 3 or 4 years, I want to say.
Cool.
Yeah. And then
I'm looking at your your LinkedIn profile, I see accounting all over the place. So
Yeah.
you stayed in your accounting wheelhouse, and now you're a controller at NanoCellect. Maybe some of the interesting, you got several roles here. We don't have to go through all of them, but maybe, some of the more interesting things that you've done so far in your career.
Yeah. So, trying to think, I've, as far as kind of industry, I've been all over the place, like I mentioned, painting contractor, Leap Wireless, which is the Cricket brand of cell phone. They were spun off from Qualcomm. That was kind of my first real accounting job. After college, was there for a few years, dipped my toe in at Petco for a while, then worked, at Humana, which is, a multi-billion dollar health insurer based in Louisville. They kind of had a technology wing that they had purchased through acquisition in San Diego here. StemGen, a startup biotech.
All right, so Aaron's computer died. We're now on phone audio. I think you left off at StemGen, and you kind of take it from there.
Okay, yeah. So I think I was kind of going out of order a little bit. Yeah, so StemGen, startup biotech in the stem cell space. And then I was with FTD, which is kind of a floral delivery company and e-commerce, and worked for some companies they had in San Diego, some brands, Pro Flowers, Sherry's Berries, and Personal Creations, and I went through some eventful things there, and eventually made my way and ended up here at NanoCellect, where I've been for about a year and a half now.
Cool. I see you checking some boxes there in San Diego. You got Petco, you got biotech. Those are good San Diego industries. And you've been at NanoCellect since November 2020. Maybe give us a little overview of what NanoCellect does.
Yeah, so NanoCellect is, I don't know that it's necessarily a startup. There's definitely a growth phase company, a little bit of a startup atmosphere. And our main product is called the Wolf, and it is a microfluidic cell sorter, which, basically, from my point of view, obviously I'm not a scientist, but it's a tool that researchers use to sort cells, on whatever criteria they're looking for, and that they will, it can sort into single cells and individually, one cell in a well, or kind of a mass sorting, of all the cells that kind of meet the criteria they're looking for. To sort those out in, whatever research application they're going for.
That sounds pretty fancy. So is this something I can hold in the palm of my hand? Is it the size of a room, or is it something I can't even see?
Yeah, so it's a cube that can fit on a bench top, maybe 2 feet by 2 feet, 2 foot cube or so. So, and that's, I guess, a lot of the competitor products, historically are, take up half a room type of a deal. So that's kind of one of our value propositions, is the size. And then also, it's a little more gentle, I guess, so most of the cells will make it through, still living and viable if you're, creating a cell culture or something like that.
And so you might have came on board after they implemented Acumatica, but I guess first question is, when did you implement Acumatica, and maybe you could walk us through the selection process if you were part of that.
Yeah, so I was after the selection process. I think NanoCellect implemented Acumatica, I believe, in 2019. Maybe 2020, and we just loaded 2019 historical data. I'm not positive. But yeah, so I'd come in, post implementation, and kind of just have been self-taught, since I started, basically.
And since sounds like are you a manufacturer? So you're actually, or are you just like reselling something that someone else is
So
manufacturing?
we do all the, the research and development. We have some licensing agreements, I think, with UCSD. Our founders, I think, kind of spun the company out of some initial technology from UCSD, but we do manufacture. We use a third party to do a lot of the assembly, and then we'll do kind of the last mile, calibration and getting it out the door. So we do have, I think, a custom module called Lite manufacturing in Acumatica, which on implement, I think there's just a normal manufacturing module, and we kind of implemented this custom Lite version of that.
Ah, okay. Is that from, I'm blanking on it right now, up in Glendale? There's an Acumatica partner. Got to look it up.
ASC, I think, is who we use.
Oh, ASC. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
And so they've got a light manufacturing module. So you didn't want the full blown heavy duty Acumatica manufacturing edition, but I guess kits weren't enough for you. You needed something in between.
Exactly.
Okay. And then, you weren't part of the selection process, but, as far as you've been able to gather, do you know what other systems they looked at and kind of what were the criteria and what made Acumatica the winner there?
Yeah, I'm not too positive with that. I know they were using QuickBooks previously. That just obviously wasn't getting the job done as the business began to scale. So most of our team on the finance side is relatively new. So we're kind of a little bit picking up the pieces, but my understanding is really that operations kind of drove the selection and implementation of Acumatica. So we definitely have some challenges there where the finance team didn't maybe have a strong enough voice during implementation. So there's just a little kind of unique things that we have to deal with, because of that.
And if you can, no requirement here, but if you can share like ballpark annual revenue, number of employees, just so I get an idea of how big you are.
Yeah. So we are around 75 employees right now, and maybe by the end of the year we'll be in the 90s. Assuming growth goes accordingly. We doubled in revenue from 19 to 20, I think. The pandemic kind of kept things a little flatter in 21. Then we expect to double again this year. And we're in the $0 to $25 million range.
Okay. Yeah. So you're too big for QuickBooks, but you're not gigantic. You're not a $100+ million company, but that sounds like still solid territory for Acumatica. Yeah. And maybe business wise, still on the business side, is it a product that's like, I don't know Biomedical very well at all. Is it like, I know there's R&D that goes on. I mean, is it, I know it's not pharmaceuticals where you have like clinical phases and all that, but is it like a totally viable product, or is it still something that's sort of in an R&D phase, when you go to market?
Right. So it's definitely a viable product. Last year, so it kind of all mushes together, but in the past year or so, we launched our second generation of that product. The first generation is still, viable and sellable. The second generation, again, this is a little bit beyond my understanding, but it has the ability, basically there's more lasers within it. So it has, and each laser kind of has a bandwidth. So it allows for additional criteria to be, searched for, while you're looking at your cells. So some applications only need one, more advanced applications need multiple. So that's kind of the differentiator on our second generation product. And then we're, constantly developing, new innovation, trying to drive new innovations to allow for, more advanced or more complex sorting abilities, kind of using the general, the basis is the sorting technology, but then there's how you look at those cells as they're passing through the unit to allow for more robust selection, I guess. So, on that side, we're continually doing research and development.
Yeah, so it's definitely not a commodity. This is something that's continuing to advance, but you're only on the second generation. So primarily you're going to market with, you probably still have some first generation that you have to support. You got a second generation. You might have some accessories that you sell with it, but it's not like you're a distributor with hundreds and hundreds of SKUs. From an inventory standpoint inside Acumatica, you're dealing with a relatively small number of SKUs that you're actually selling, I would assume.
Right. So yeah, exactly. Our sellable SKUs, it's pretty limited. In addition to the cell sorting units, we have a consumable cartridge and just some different elements that are used for calibration, that we sell. But below the sellable units, we have a pretty extensive list of stock items, of components, that go into the final product.
And let's dig in maybe a little bit on that light manufacturing that you're using from ASC. Is it also allowing you to put labor in there and overhead as well?
Yes, we have kind of some standard rates that are used. So as the work orders are created and completed, I think it pulls in some standard labor and overhead costs, but then we're also kind of tracking it offline as well and kind of, truing up, to get to, our actual final allocation.
And your finished product is standard costed?
Yeah, with like the labor and overhead piece. Yeah.
Okay. And is it all manufactured there in San Diego or is it somewhere else? Do you have multiple manufacturing facilities?
Yeah, no, yeah, everything's done out of our office here in San Diego. We do consign, like I mentioned, we do have a third party that does a lot of the assembly, that is also here in San Diego where we consign the inventory to them. They kind of work their magic and then, we bring it back in our office here in San Diego.
And I'm curious, being biomedical, is it more like a warehouse or is it more like a clean room when it comes to your manufacturing environment?
Yeah, it's more, to me, it looks more like a clean room or kind of like a lab / research environment. So yeah, we've got, a lot of engineers, even people kind of putting together circuit boards, and then also doing a lot of quality control and testing with those cartridges. Like you said, it's an early generation product, so there's still, some quality issues and, it's you're dealing with, with nanoparticle, single cell size things. So, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, a lot of troubleshooting that happens and, just a little speck of dust can cause all kinds of issues. So, yeah, it's definitely not your standard manufacturing environment.
So, we'll still call it manufacturing, but you're in the lab there making this stuff. And
yeah.
Are the people in the lab, are they using Acumatica or do you do it on paper and someone else enters the data? What does that manufacturing flow look like from an Acumatica standpoint?
Yeah, so all the inventory movements are go through Acumatica. So yeah, I'm trying to think, what the flow is.
Physically, do you actually have people in the lab who are logging into Acumatica, or are they just doing their work somewhere else and someone else puts it in?
I'm not 100% sure. I know there are individuals. I don't think all of them are. They might kind of have like a lead, within their team. And then we also kind of have our supply chain manager. He kind of controls all the inventory for any like internal transfers. So, they kind of go through him. So they're not maybe directly transacting in Acumatica. But, there might be a few people that, that go in and put in, like a request for materials and that type of thing.
And that makes sense with what you said earlier, that operations led the selection process. To me, that's the advantage of that. Sometimes if accounting leads the selection process, operations is less apt to participate in the ERP or be as friendly towards it. So, it sounds like they are owning their process in Acumatica, whether everyone keys it in or not, at least that they're using it. You don't get like a daily dump of manufacturing data, and finance has to do that part in Acumatica. At least you're using it at an operational level in the company. That's good to me.
Yeah, exactly.
So then what about, you got the manufacturing process. What about other either modules in Acumatica or other third-party things that you added in? Do you have, I would assume selling these machines, it's more like a true sales process, but do you have any kind of e-commerce? What other pieces do you have that you're utilizing?
Yeah, so we're not really utilizing much e-commerce. We're definitely, we have a small Shopify site, but that's again just going to be for purchases of the consumable product. It's a kind of a longer sales cycle. These units sell, for $100,000 to $200,000. The main unit. So sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought.
And who buys them, by the way? Is it universities or who buys these things?
Yeah. So universities, research, biotech kind of, or, pharma type companies, so I'd say it's a pretty even mix between, commercial and academic customers. And again, when you do go through academic, there's kind of different requirements, in that sales cycle as well.
And is it primarily United States or is it international?
Yeah, we're primarily United States. We do have a pretty healthy international business as well. For that, we generally go through distributors, just, so that we don't have to kind of navigate all the regulatory things, setting up all these international entities.
It sounds like a cool business. Sounds like you got in at a cool time also. Like you're not in full-blown startup mode where you're wondering if your paycheck is going to come next month. You've got some kind of proven product that now you get to scale. I mean, that sounds like a fun environment to be in. Yeah,
it really is. It's we've got a good team here, and it's been, it's really exciting time, with the launch of the second generation product, and kind of really seeing the company grow and kind of take off here. So yeah, it's definitely fun, and it's kind of nice too now that we're getting through the COVID phase here and starting to go into the office and see people and put faces to names, and so yeah, it's a great time.
So back on like other areas of Acumatica. So you're using ASCs, light manufacturing. I'm assuming you're tracking inventory in Acumatica. You're doing the financials in Acumatica. You said you've got an outside Shopify site for like ancillary things. I want to talk about Velixo. We exchanged emails on that. Before we get to Velixo, though, any other third-party things that are involved with Acumatica?
None that I'm aware of, and none that I'm using. Let's put it that way. But like I said, we're definitely growing rapidly. I think, I mentioned we're in the around 75 heads. I think last year at this point we're at like in the 50s. So we're adding a lot of people, kind of growing and scaling up, and kind of maturing as a business. So I know people are bringing in lots of new tools. So there could be third-party stuff, but none that I'm using.
Sounds like a somewhat fluid environment. That's the nature of a growing company.
Yep, absolutely.
So I want to talk Velixo before we get there. You mentioned earlier accounting wasn't as involved in the selection process, and maybe there was some pain associated with that. And maybe you could talk through some of the challenges that you've had personally as a controller.
Yeah, so I think again, and that's the thing too. I think with we do have some customization going on, and I never received any real formal training with Acumatica, so I've kind of just had to bump around in things and kind of figure it out. I reach out for help, if there's something a little more challenging. But it's funny, even just closing periods, it took a while, right? We hadn't been closing the sub ledgers necessarily, or there would be open work orders, and we wouldn't be able to close, the inventory module, and then they would close out a work order, and it would go back in time several months. So I kind of been working through that. Got a process in place, and so now I'm closing all my sub ledgers, closing the books every month. I'm trying to think. I think just kind of the workflow within the sales order module, again, isn't necessarily how I would have set it up between the different order types. But again, we've kind of have workarounds in place and understand, how the different SSs, SOs, SIs are, how we're using them, and kind of working around that. And kind of my current challenge that I'm kind of working through right now is just, digging into our reason codes. We've got way more than we probably need, but, it looks like once those are created, they kind of live forever. So, but maybe not, like I said, I'm still learning a lot about Acumatica, and, kind of learning things, what's a feature versus what's a bug, and what is a, self-inflicted part of, our customization and implementation process.
Yeah, and I think those kind of points are fairly common, especially your company size. You just got off QuickBooks, right? And a lot of times making that jump into a full-blown ERP system, it's usually bumpy for someone coming off of QuickBooks, because they don't even have these processes in place, in a lot of cases. So, it's not that unusual. You haven't closed periods, you got data cleanup issues you got to do. That's not too shocking to me to hear. You mentioned, though, on the sales order side, I'm curious, are you doing anything with CRM? And, yes or no? And then to what extent are salespeople involved in that process in Acumatica?
Yeah, so we are using the CRM. So the salespeople, they kind of own it from quote until commitment. And then our team, we have what we call the sales order desk, and they'll kind of convert that quote into the sales order and kind of push it along, through the selling, through fulfillment and then invoicing.
But you've actually got salespeople entering leads and quotes inside of, or actually, you didn't say leads, but are they doing leads, and sounds like they're doing quotes for sure in Acumatica?
Yeah, so they could, again, so I'm just not super familiar with that module. I haven't really looked at it too much, but yeah, I think they're doing the full cycle. So yeah, leads. Yeah, sorry. It's funny. I was actually just, we mentioned Velixo. I was just working with our marketing team yesterday, kind of doing a demo of Velixo for them, kind of showing how they can, pull some of that data out. And, I thought it was quotes, but it could be leads too. I might be using the wrong terminology.
Oh, that's cool though. For your type of company, growing manufacturer, you're really looking to capture market share. That's got to be a hot area for you. I mean, the manufacturing side, maybe at this point has kind of settled down. It's not terribly complex in terms of, like a supply chain with international suppliers and all that kind of stuff. But on your sales side, that's interesting to me that you've got salespeople in Acumatica in some capacity. I think that's a big strength that Acumatica has CRM in the system. A lot of ERPs, most ERPs, you got to go to a separate system and sync data in between. That sounds like a positive. It sounds like you're still maybe working through some workflow things on the sales order side, but that sounds like a big plus, I think.
Yeah, definitely from my side, it's definitely a big plus. I think as much integration as you can have, the better. Obviously it limits opportunity for loss of data and information, or even errors, and when you're moving from one system to another.
So I want to throw one more thing at you before we hit Velixo, and that is, I always like mentioning this idea to controllers like yourself. I like calling it the stuff that should never happen dashboard. And the idea is use the Acumatica dashboard tool and you keep it real simple. You use the scorecard KPI widget only, and you make all your scorecard KPI widgets either green or red. And then you design generic inquiries that catch stuff that should never happen. And, as the controller, you catch that stuff usually at month end, if you catch it at all, because everything flows downhill into the accounting department, right? And you got to deal with it at month end. And the problem is you're trying to close the books. There's only so much you can do in that close process to get it closed. And the other problem is when you find a problem, it might have happened like 2 weeks ago and no one really remembers exactly why it happened. So the idea of a stuff that should never happen dashboard is those things that you catch at month end. You're supposed to always do a certain thing on the sales order, whatever it is. You design generic inquiry to catch that data. You drop it on stuff that should never happen. And then you can just glance at that on a daily basis or multiple times a day to make sure all your widgets are green. If you have a red one, you got an issue you need to address. Do you do anything like that currently?
I don't, and I don't utilize any dashboards right now within Acumatica. That sounds like a great practice. And again, as I learn and kind of grow with my understanding on how to create and utilize generic inquiries and kind of some of these dashboards, that would be definitely something I'd love to implement.
And you could even do the same concept in Velixo, right? And maybe you're kind of doing that already, where you just capture it in Velixo and you build your quote stuff that should never happen dashboard there. Then you can use all your Excel skills, to build it. You don't have to learn the dashboard.
I'm definitely leveraging Velixo and setting up things like that to kind of catch stuff that falls through the cracks. And again, I think we've started using Velixo right around the beginning of the year, and I'm definitely getting more comfortable and confident, with that tool, and starting to kind of create some cool things that just kind of give me more confidence with what's going on, but then also just making me a lot more efficient as well.
So that sounds interesting. Let's talk about some of those cool things. Maybe let's skip the standard P&L and the standard balance sheet. Give us some of the cool stuff that you've been doing there in Velixo.
So, trying to think. So, most recently, I just set up a template, to calculate all of our sales commissions for all the different salespeople. That was a very manual process before, and now it's more just kind of changing the date parameters and pushing a button and kind of getting that calculation. A lot of our journal entries, again, just kind of setting up these templates, and once you kind of do the work on the back end, it's really just plug and play on the journal entries, and just pushing the button and changing the date.
Can I ask two quick things on that? So first, when you said the commissions, are you using the GI formula to pull that data?
Yeah, I'm using a GI and basically pulling in all the sales orders for the month. Yeah. And
then on the journal entry, are you doing the writeback, or are you just getting it in a format that you manually import into Acumatica?
So I'm using the GL writeback feature, within Velixo. And again, it sounds silly, right? That you don't have to go into Acumatica and, it's just a few extra clicks, but it's just, it does save time. And I think anytime you can save a little bit of time, even if it's just a minute, it just kind of makes you feel good. It's good psychologically, right? So
I was going to use the same word. I agree. It's psychological even. Yeah. It may not be measurable even, but yeah, it just makes you feel good, right? Makes you feel like you're not working in the Stone Age.
Yeah, exactly. So I love that writeback feature. I also, we weren't leveraging Acumatica for our budget at all. As soon as I started using Velixo, I said, hey, this is really easy to write back the budget into Acumatica. So I created a budget ledger. We started using that, and then again, now having that data in Acumatica, and then with Velixo, you can put in a lot of templates for variance analysis, calculating kind of KPIs. Implemented like a stat ledger for units and head count. So just and then once you kind of have that data in Acumatica, you set up your templates in Velixo, and you can do a lot of per unit margin analysis and just different metrics and indicators. Where if you're manually compiling that data and exporting it each month, it could take a lot more time and errors can happen. But once you kind of have it all set up within Velixo and with that data in Acumatica, it becomes pretty easy.
Since you brought up the stat ledger, I want to ask you, I haven't done this myself, but it seems to me like you could do like a 2-tiered budget process where you have like the head count and things that are non-financial, non-GL numbers that you would then write. Maybe you'd key those in to your budget template and write it into the statistical ledger. Then you'd have like almost a second sheet. Maybe it's like a second step that would read the statistical ledger and even calculate some dollar numbers that you would then write back into the GL. Is that how you do it? Or maybe you could describe a little more about how you use the statistical ledger in the budget process.
Yeah. So I think, there's two things, I'm trying to, so from the budget process, so really it's more, and we're kind of continually adding on, but for basic, let's just say for January we budgeted that we would sell 10 units, and in actual we sold 12. Again, like our budgeting process isn't that complex yet, where we're taking the unit. I mean, we are obviously for the revenue build up, doing bottoms up from units, but so it's more just for a comparison, right? So at least at this point, what I'm leveraging, so we can say, we beat our budgeted revenue, by X dollars, and from a volume perspective, it's 2 units or 20% on the 10, and then kind of get into some analysis, how much of that was related to the volume versus, was our margin better or worse on a per unit basis, and kind of digging into some of those details.
I see. So your statistical ledger is more involved in your reporting side. It's not so much involved in the budget process with coming up with your budget numbers.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's definitely used more on the reporting side right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's more common in situations where there's multiple business units or larger companies that have you don't want tons of Excel files flying around. So being able to write back to a central location makes sense there. I could see how you just do all that math in an Excel file. Velixo doesn't even have to be involved in the budget process. You just put the end result back in and then you report on it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's more, exactly. The Velixo, really for Velixo, for budgeting right now, it's more just the writeback file that I'm using. But it is nice too, though, as we iterate the budget, And once I've loaded, the first iteration, you can export that, the existing data, into the new file to provide, the budget owners for, for their departments, and they can kind of incrementally change it. Or if they change something they weren't supposed to change, you have that record already loaded in Acumatica, so they can't mess you up too bad.
So it sounds like, Velixo's been good for you, and you maybe Acumatica is a little slower burn of a learning process, but Velixo just speaks to your Excel skills already. Have you found that to be the case?
Exactly. Yeah. So exactly. So I think, obviously I know how to use Excel pretty well, where, Acumatica, saw the learning curve. And, so yeah, I mean, we were already kind of building our financial statements in Excel, but, Velixo makes it a lot more automated and less manual. Where again, I think the more manual processes you have, the more higher risk you have for making a mistake or overlooking something. Yeah.
And the unhappier you are.
Exactly. You start getting frustrated and you have to dig, you spend an hour, finding that one number, that one cell that got hard keyed instead of having the formula. So it just saves a lot of trouble. There's definitely an investment on the front end, but now that, now that I kind of have a lot of that investment done, now I'm just so much more efficient at month end. Because we have a small team too. It's me, an accounting manager, and then our AP person. So as the business grows and scales, having a tool like Velixo to just kind of make things more efficient and quicker, it really is helpful with having a small team.
You mentioned earlier that you showed Velixo to marketing. That sounded interesting, but how were you?
Yeah.
Well, first, did they like it? And what were you reporting on?
They did. So, so that's the nice thing, obviously, out of the box, it's tailored for finance, and, there's some kind of canned Velixo formulas, that all relate to finance. But within Acumatica, any GI can be utilized by Velixo. So, I think basically, I think we talked about the quotes or, leads. Again, I'm not positive exactly what the table is, but, the marketing, they were uploading it. They do have another tool that, that they use to, to show kind of like the sales funnel and that kind of thing. And they had to manually load the data into that. And, I just showed them, how we could set up a template in using Velixo in Excel, and you just change the date parameters, and it's going to pull that data in. You can set the columns up and the order and which columns you want to see. So right now, again, I think they're just using the marketing team, just kind of using the leads, and but the sales team, they like looking at the sales orders as well. So I kind of built some templates there so they can kind of track. So outside the financial budget, right, the sales team has targets for, orders taken and that kind of thing. Where again, we have a longer sales cycle, but, so they can kind of manage to that to see how they're tracking, to their quarterly goals as far as sales and leads.
That's cool. Yeah, you're already leveraging it pretty extensively, only having implemented it just this year, a few months ago. That's pretty cool. And I think, we exchanged emails. You were one of the people who responded to my idea for a GI Bootcamp. And, I'm still feeling out that idea. One question I'm asking people, would they be interested in just GIs or GIs and dashboards or GIs and Velixo? You were one of the ones interested in GIs and Velixo. But even though you're using Velixo and that GI formula to leverage generic inquiry data, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you haven't created any generic inquiries on your own yet, right?
Exactly. So that's kind of, in my mind, kind of where my next kind of level of growth is, with Velixo, like I mentioned, it can tap into any GI, but yeah, I'm just using kind of our existing GIs. But I think there's opportunity for me to write some new generic inquiries where I can kind of unlock some additional reporting or analysis, with kind of marrying Velixo with those new GIs.
That's cool. That sounds like the fun part. It's like you didn't have to be there for the pain of the implementation. You got to come in and get involved more in the fun part on the reporting side. You've got Velixo at your disposal to help you do that. That sounds fun.
Totally. Yeah, it was kind of my joke, that that Velixo was kind of my Christmas present, my new toy that I was playing with. And it's like you don't mind working late when you're kind of creating things and digging into that stuff. I spent hours and hours just kind of messing with it, and but yeah, that's where being a finance accounting guy, you kind of geek out on that stuff, and it's kind of fun, and you just see the value in investing that time up front and kind of unlocking additional things down the road, and at the end of the day, like my goal, right, is to provide value to the CEO, CFO, and the different managers within the company, and giving them data more quickly and more actionable and useful to them, is kind of when you're doing your job right. So, I think that these tools really help me do that.
Well, that's cool. Thanks for sharing your Acumatica story. I've got another call at the top of the hour, and before I hit that, I wanted to ask you something offline. So, maybe we'll wrap it up here. Any parting thoughts before we close it out?
Nope. I appreciate you kind of working with me through. We kind of got off to an interesting start here today, but I appreciate it. And I've poked around a little bit in your forums. I haven't had a lot of time to spend there, but it's definitely a nice resource. Even if I'm not actively commenting, sometimes I'll poke in and search something and find answers as I'm kind of navigating my way and training myself with Acumatica here. So I appreciate it.
Well, yeah, and thanks for coming on, taking the time today. Appreciate it.
Yep, my pleasure.
All right. Well, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next episode of AUGforums.com Real Talk. Thanks for listening, and take care.